Hey guys, so it's Andrew here, and I've got a story to tell you, and I want to know from you by the end of this video, was I in the wrong or was my attorney in the wrong? And this story goes back to around 2010. You see, between 2005 and 2010, I was living in the UK. And in that time period, I started a property letting agency. I was very, very active in property. All I did 7 days a week was I was scouting for properties. I had my boards up saying we buy houses for cash, website advertising, Google ads. I was traveling the country, and my pure focus was getting direct to sellers, negotiating deals, and sourcing properties to London investors, and as well as from the Irish, the Welsh, everyone. That was the core of my business back in those days in Grimsby, Cleethorpes, and other parts of the UK. Now, the reason I'm sharing the story with you is I entered into a property deal, a transaction, my first commercial transaction, and it was a complete mess up. Let me explain how it happened and stay tuned till the end. I want to know from you, was it myself? Did I do something wrong? Did I not instruct the attorney correctly, or should I have expected the attorney to get it right? So it came down to, I was very active in property, right? And there was a landlord called David who was born and bred in Grimsby, he was in his 60s, and he had a big property portfolio, about 50, 60 properties. Now, I used to go to landlord forums. I was very active, like I said. And I came across David, and David said, hey, I've got a portfolio. Me not realizing it's actually very old, run down, not the best of areas. But hey ho, that's fine. I viewed some of the properties and I ended up going to his house, a mansion. This guy was a multi-millionaire. You drive into his driveway and it's like, wow, this massive house, and there's a fountain and lots of parking. And I met his wife and I was in his lounge, and I said, look, I've got some potential buyers from London looking for buy-to-lets, providing, David, I can buy them below market value, and the yields make sense. I can source them on for you. I won't charge you any fees. I'll charge the buyer. Great. I get into the phone. I start calling investors. And yes, of course, naturally, I built a reputation, and I did view some of the properties, and I did need some work. And in that stage, I came across, there were two properties, two guest houses, 10, 11 bed. We call them HMOs in England. In South Africa, we call them multi-lets. So, hey, Dave, what about these two? Now, the difference was his bog standard stock was £60,000, £70,000. So entry-level stuff with good yields, but not great condition. And I said, David, look at these two properties. It was the Beverley Guest House. You can Google it, Beverley Guest House on Isaacs Hill in Cleethorpes, and the Colton Lodge. And David said, Andrew, I'm actually looking at either selling it or doing what we call a lease option, or an option to buy. And I said, but what do you mean? He says, well, look, you're young, you're active, and yes, I did have a letting agency at that stage in the UK. I had about 180 rooms that we were looking after and managing. So if anyone knew how to get tenants in and out, it was us. Now, this was at a time when the market was booming, and I said, that's fine, I'll take them over. So I took the properties over, and in terms of how I took the properties over, I'd sat down with my attorney. Now, listen to this. I wasn't comfortable doing a 10-year lease. So I said to my attorney, can we not do a 3-year lease? So my attorney negotiated with his attorney. And they said, no, they won't do a 3-year lease. It's a 10-year lease. Now, at this stage, going, if I enter into this transaction, I take over two 10-bed HMOs. Remember, you always need an exit. So my exit was, look, I'm willing to commit. I'm willing to give it at least 3 years, or even 5 years, and there's a break clause in the commercial agreement. But there's no way I'm going to commit to taking a 10-year lease over two residential properties where, yes, I was full of confidence. That's all I was doing in the UK. I had my letting agency sourcing properties. I knew the area. I was doing corporate lets. I was very, very confident, bearing in mind my tenant profile was mainly contractors coming into M&M and working on the Lindsay Oil Refinery and all of that. So I sat down, I spoke to Simone, and I spoke to the attorney saying, look, Mr. Attorney, I'm very keen to give this a go. It's a risk, but I'm young. I'm happy to take risks, but I need an extra clause. And now, as this is happening, I need you to know that David, this is a lesson to be learned. David, the landlord's pushing me. Andrew, come, take over. Take over from next week. I'll give you a week's free rent just to settle in. It's like, David, okay, and I wasn't in a rush, but it's putting me under pressure. So I met John, my attorney, and I said, John, I'm not happy with doing a 10-year lease. If you get me the 5-year lease, this is the day I now took over, physically moved to the property. Okay. I remember sitting with them, and I remember telling them I don't feel comfortable. Okay. So we move into the property, and actually now Simone and I move into room 1 of the Beverley Guest House. Nigel, my business partner at that stage, moves into room 3, back of the kitchen, the Colton Lodge. So I'm here, he's here. Now, it was a great experience while it lasted. I learned how to deal with, call it a traditional guest house we were living in. The cons were Friday nights, Oaks are knocking on your door for 2 o'clock in the morning. Get up, sorry, mate, we got no rooms, or we got a room. Moving the wrong tenants into the property, trying to get the mix of tenants, high gas and electricity bills. I mean, here in South Africa right now, the biggest issue is utilities, right? The lack of managing utilities, gas, electricity, water. Hey, I faced that, 10, 15 years ago. So I started there. That's why I started learning the importance of managing utilities. The fun part was the people I met, the contractors from across the world, sitting down, having wine, having beers, learning the hospitality industry, physically being in there, managing these properties. And we got to, I don't know when it was, don't quote me. It's irrelevant. Year 3 or year 5. And I remember I had to give 6 months notice. Now, I knew that I was moving back to South Africa. Logan was born in 2010. And so I kind of figured, great experience, but don't worry, in the back of my mind, okay, the mistake I know I made is that I left the contract with the attorney. I might be answering my own question here, but I never went back to check that my attorney had actually gone back to the other attorneys to negotiate and to confirm that there's a break clause. And when I wanted to get out of the contract, the other side, they fought back and they said, no, you've signed a 10-year lease agreement, you can't get out. I said, no, don't stop being stupid. I knew as a worst case, there was a break clause in 5 years. As long as I gave 6 months notice, I could get out of that deal. No problem. In my head, belief was there. I knew I had the conversation. There's no way in hell I would sign a 10-year lease without a break clause. This is not because I'm this big commercial tenant. I'm Andrew and Simone. We're managing, we want to take over. If I can buy, I set the purchase price at a certain limit. The market had changed. If you remember back in those days, property prices dropped. It wasn't worth what I wanted to pay. But like every contract, especially the lease options and the lease to buy, I had the option of not exercising my rights to buy the property. So the contract was set up in such a way that I did not have to buy them. I could just walk away in terms of the purchase, but the lease. So I went back to the attorney who didn't take responsibility for it. But now, how do you fight an attorney? Do I now pay another attorney to fight? I did actually go to another attorney, but we couldn't actually get the original documentation back. But again, going back in those days, I wasn't clued up in the commercial world. I'd never been in a position where someone's saying I can't get out the lease. So I felt very insecure, to be honest. I felt nervous. I felt scared, going, oh my gosh. And a long story short, I actually bought myself out of the lease. I paid the guy, I don't know what it was, 10 or 15,000 pounds. I negotiated a fee with him just to get out. It was an absolute nightmare, the negotiations. It takes me all the way back to the very first or that last conversation with the attorney about entering into the lease, jumping in tomorrow. John, you've got to make sure that I've got that break clause, and he didn't, and he screwed up. And the problem is he became a mate, not a close mate, but I know him. I still know him to this day. I didn't want to burn bridges with him. I believe in long-term relationships. He was building my business. I was building my business. But I look at it going, so as the investor, I feel I should point fingers at myself going, Andrew, why did you take control of the contract? Andrew, it's a 10-year lease. How can you be so stupid, Andrew? Why didn't you be more pedantic, more detailed, saying, I'm not moving in, Dave, until I know that I've got this in place. And that's a lesson I learned that day. With sellers, with JV partners, with anyone. As soon as you start feeling the pressure, and they're putting unnecessary pressure, because here's the truth. If I'd have moved into Oaks property 2, 3, 4 weeks after the negotiation, so what? Who cares? In the bigger scheme of things, it would mean nothing. And the fact he was pushing me so hard also rang alarm bells. The fact that there was no final agreement. But also the fact that my attorney didn't quite do what he had to do. He didn't get me out of the lease, so was he the right attorney? So it's a big mess, I'll be honest with you. And I think there's some big lessons to be taken out of it. You see, myself as an entrepreneur, I like to get out there. I like to go. I like to move. I don't like to pause. I'm not a patient person, and maybe that's one of my traits or negative traits where I just want to, I want to get things going. But what I've learned in the property game, ladies and gents, is the importance of a contract and you understanding every paragraph and you thinking of every eventuality out there that can go wrong. Whether it's an offer to purchase, whether it's a joint venture partnership, you never ever, even like with my attorney, Bruno, he's my best mate. He's a great attorney. He's good at what he does to this day. And he'll say, Andrew, Make sure you read it. Make sure you understand it. Make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's. Make sure it's 100%, right? Stop giving control to everyone else. Yes, pay your accountants well, pay your attorneys well, get the right agents, get the right tax consultants. Yes, but as a professional property investor, don't just rely on other people. Get them to do the work, but check their work, because that deal cost me a headache, cost me stress, cost me sleepless nights, because I was also a beginner property back then. Yes, I was active, but I only had a few years under my belt, and I felt under pressure, and I just wanted to share the story with you. So let me know in the comments box, do you guys agree that I should blame myself, or do you think the attorney should have protected me in that deal? Let me know in the comments box. And I've got a few more stories I want to share with you. Not all rosy, but I want to share with you what happened. Stay tuned.